Good afternoon. It's a great honor to be here and to talk to your community about what we've been doing in New York Cider. I'm here to tell you that things change. 20 years ago, I was a starving Broadway dancer. Now I'm a well-fed cider producer and expert. I've also had a big journey along the way to where I am today, which is a great example that you have to be ready and plan and make your own new reality. When I was in the theater, I always worked in very nice restaurants in New York City. And I learned about high quality, premium food and wine and spirits. When I was in the theater, I got to travel all over the world and learn about the great beverages and foods in different regions. It was those experiences and my curiosity and passion for those things that led to my new career in the cider mill as a founding member of the New York Cider Association and the marketing committee chairman. And it was that experience with my cider mill that also got me a job working for different distributors of wine and spirits in New York City, managing fine spirits, selling them into the market. I also got the opportunity to build a portfolio of specialty craft spirits at one of the best fine wine distributors in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And then finally today, when I'm not making cider and selling cider, I also sell an imported spirits portfolio of Japanese whiskey, Italian liqueurs, cognac, Calvados, from all over the world to the best restaurants and stores in New York. So I bring a few perspectives today, and that's why my point in giving you this list is to say that I am a producer. I am someone who has sold to the consumer at the restaurants in New York City. And I've also worked in the distribution, selling to the buyers, the sommeliers, the store owners, on a premium level. And that's the perspective I want to bring and share to you today. My journey with cider started because I had a question. Why in New York City, the capital of the world, right outside the city, beautiful Hudson Valley, why did we not have what Provence, Tuscany, so many regions, Normandy have? Why did we not have a great agro-economy of small producers making fabulous products that were distinctive and special, made by people in a place? I know that I enjoyed those things everywhere I went. And when I was in New York City, I was drinking international products. I was eating international products. And I wanted more local, authentic products from right where I lived. That led me, while I was on the theater tour, to take a course in distilling. The American government had just changed the laws so that small producers could make brandy and whiskey, and I thought that was a very compelling idea. So while I was on the tour, I took a course. I took a little vacation, and I went and I took a distilling course. When I came back home to New York City, my friend and I started to go to a new distillery that had opened in the Hudson Valley to make apple brandy. Because New York produces a lot of apples, as Sarah said, second largest producer in the United States. This was a continuation of what I had done after my course in distilling. Everywhere I went to the distillery and I hung around and I asked a lot of questions. I made myself a nuisance to try to learn as much as I could. And then I went home and I would make apple brandy in my kitchen. My wife wants me to tell you that this is not our kitchen. This is just a picture from the internet. However, mine still looked a lot like this, with a bucket from the hardware store. Nothing exploded, no one died. I was working in really nice restaurants at the time, and everything I made, I would take to the restaurant, and I'd ask the bartender and the sommelier, who were my good friends, to taste everything. I made gin, terrible. I made brandy, okay. Then we went to the distillery and we took it to the next level. Still no license, no company, no plan. We went to an orchard near where I had grown up outside of the city, the Soon's Orchard. It's a 125-year-old family-run orchard, and that's Art Soons. He's in his 80s, and he still runs the farm with his son, who's now my business partner in Orchard Hill. It's a family-run farm, pretty big, but not enormous. We'd buy 500 gallons of juice from them, and we'd truck it to the distillery. They would let us ferment it there, and we distilled maybe a couple barrels of brandy every year, and we just put them in there. After a few years, we had some okay brandy, some pretty good brandy, no excellent brandy, but we took that brandy we made, Pommeau. Pommeau is a French aperitif made from combining apple juice with brandy that's been aged in the barrel and then putting it back to age some more. Our Pommeau was very good. So we took it to Mr. Soon's and we started our company making cider and Pommeau. Our cider mill is just an hour north of New York City. And some of the challenges that Sarah described about encroaching cities, kind of squeezing orchards out of the distance, definitely applies to the Soons family. Their orchard is on the edge of town, but surrounded by buildings and houses. They do not sell their fruit, fresh fruit, to the commercial wholesale market, but they have a farm stand. So people come to the orchard to buy direct, fresh from the farm. And they've developed a very good business getting people to come and do that. So these are some of our ciders in the picture of our new cider mill. And this is Jeffrey, my business partner, and I we are planting some of the new cider trees that Sarah had arranged for that planting of the heirloom cider varieties. We produce 2 champagne-style ciders that are bottle fermented like a champagne. We produce 2 draft-style ciders that are carbonated like a beer, forced carbonated. Some in cans, most in bottles. And we produce 2 pomelo. An everyday pomelo, that's for drinking by itself, but also putting in cocktails. And also an older pomelo that's up to 9 years in the barrel before it's bottled. Our business is separate from Susan's Orchard, but it's located on the orchard, and all of our ciders are produced from those apples. Most of our apples are table fruit, dessert style apples. The Soons produce 75 varieties on the orchard. But we do have 5 acres of newly planted, high tannin, high acid, and crab apples for making cider exclusively. All of our ciders are designed to be drier than most ciders, and all of them sell premium to the market price-wise. We got licensed to start producing in 2006. Things have changed a lot since then. New York did not have a license for a cider producer license at the time when we started. Our first ciders were produced by a sparkling winery nearby. The regulators didn't even know at the time if they were allowed legally to produce cider for us, if it had to be grape wine or if they could use the apples. Labeling laws at the time were designed solely for cider that had been watered down in alcohol. If the cider was over 7% alcohol by volume, you were not allowed to put cider on the label. But having worked in the restaurants and seen the new small distilleries happening, all the craft distilleries happening, I could not believe that that could not be changed. So we felt that in some ways, the fact that the laws were in our way, that there were not a lot of producers, that there was no market, made cider the perfect opportunity the laws in the market had been stacked and set up for so long to benefit big producers. And the trend was towards small producers. And New York was the second biggest producer of apples, and we think the best quality apples in the United States. It just made sense. People wanted to go to the farm to pick apples. They wanted to get pumpkins. They wanted to feel a connection to the product. I live in New York City. What's the nickname for New York City? The Big Apple. How could we not have cider industry? Did not make sense. And so now this is the landscape as it's changed over the last 10 years, 10 times bigger. But Americans are not drinking more. So we're fighting to get a piece. We're fighting to define where does cider fit. As I talk about the market, there's some ideas one has to understand. We have two channels. We have restaurants, pubs, bars, where you buy alcohol and drink it where you buy it. If you go to a restaurant and buy a bottle of cider, you cannot take it home. You have to drink it there. That's called on-premise. If you go to a store and you buy cider at the store, you have to take it home. You can't open it in the store and start drinking it. That's off-premise. So right now, cider is growing faster off-premise than every other category of alcohol in the United States. There's a lot of trends going on. People are drinking weird concoctions called hard seltzer, soda with alcohol. People are drinking cocktails in a can with no alcohol at all, but taste like a cocktail. People are drinking all kinds of alternative beverages, some that have marijuana, because marijuana is becoming more and more legal in the United States. People are smoking more and more marijuana because it's legal. And more and more people are concerned about whether drinking is healthy. And they're trying to be healthy while they drink or drink less. And this, I think, is very important to address the concern that your minister was addressing. The opposition to more alcohol. If people want to go out and just get drunk, this is not the answer. This is not the answer to just go get drunk. more small producers of thoughtful premium beverages are for thinkers, not drinkers. So this is what's happening. People are drinking better, not more. Mindful drinking, thoughtful, moderate drinking, sharing in social occasions with food, low alcohol. People are looking for healthy alternatives. Cider has no gluten, and people are very concerned about gluten for some reason. When you drink with food, it's less about getting drunk and more about enjoying the gastronomic experience. Cider is food friendly. All of these things are an argument. These are the trends that are supporting the growth of cider in the United States. So when we started to build our cidery at Soon's Orchard, we started in a 40-year-old pole barn that was soon to fall down. We enclosed one side, just the shed, the side shed. And then in the front, we made a little tasting room with a tasting bar and shelves. Everything was handmade with wood from the orchard. Very comfortable and inviting. And then we bought some tanks and made a room in the back for production. And our first champagne-style ciders were made off-premise by another licensee while we got our facility together and our licensing together. You'll notice all the people coming to visit, the pumpkins, people coming into agro-tourism. We have the harvest holidays, Thanksgiving, Halloween. We have the harvest season when people come to the orchard. Those were the first big cider occasions that were identified, that people started to feel like cider was the natural drink in the harvest time when the apples come. Even though it was last season's cider, didn't make any sense. It's how people think. And if you see nationally now, people drink cider most around holidays. Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Halloween, Christmas, special occasions, low alcohol, conviviality. And we took advantage of that. And we've slowly built our facility now. That's that same pole barn. We've expanded the building forward. We finished it, put a cupola. We have a much bigger room now available for tasting and for events and parties. And the design was meant to mimic a Norman church. Post and beam construction. All the posts are from trees that were on the orchard. And you'll notice around the top of the room, we have a frieze where all the regions, the great cider regions of the world, are engraved. The idea was to create a temple to cider, where you come to acknowledge that cider is not just important here in the Hudson Valley, but it's connected to those other traditions in Asturias, in the Basque region, in the West Country of England, in Normandy, France, in the Finger Lakes in upstate New York. So we created an environment that honored what we were doing in a way that took it very seriously. All of this activity has been going on for a number of years, while at the same time, the story that Sarah told you was progressing as well. Our first year of production, when we had no tasting room and we just had another producer make the cider for us, was also the first year that Sarah started Cider Week. And we were invited to participate with our one bottle of cider and no license yet, no facility yet. And then when she started that trip to Normandy, to Normandy, my business partner Jeffrey, the farmer, went on that journey. I was lucky enough to go on a later journey to Spain, and the mission of the Spain trip was about discovering how the Asturians in Spain have a real cider-focused culture. I think they drink 20 million liters of cider just in the state of Asturias every year. And so we went to see what that meant to have that kind of a focus, try to get ideas on how to build our own culture of cider in New York, which we've been slowly working on for years. And we discovered that just like I was inspired by those regions previously with those regional identities of food and beverage, the Asturians had that. But they also faced challenges of sustainability, because their cider was very inexpensive. So inexpensive that they couldn't support their orchards. And so now a lot of their apples were coming from other growing regions because the growers were leaving, letting the orchards go. The land was too expensive, the labor was too expensive. We also discovered that the growers were very jealous and fought amongst each other a lot. And they did not come together into an organization like we had done. They were also successful. They didn't feel the need to plan for change. That was definitely coming. They expressed shock and amazement that we were so organized at a young, for such a young industry. And soon after our visit, they actually all organized to come and visit us. So, one of the things that we were very proud of as the New York Cider Association, and that we're very hopeful as a new initiative, is the establishment of a mark for New York cider made from New York apples that any New York cider producer that uses 100% apples from New York State can use on their bottle. And we've just launched this. It was funded by the state of New York by a grant to help us find an agency to design the mark so we can put it on the bottle. And my wife and I were just redesigning our labels to accommodate the new logo. The efforts that Sarah and Glenwood helped lead to get us to get organized and to pull together, to invite us to meetings at the Glenwood Center where all the cider producers would gather and argue and come up with lists and ideas led by Sarah and her team at Glenwood, helped us really make the New York Cider Association a viable and vibrant organization. We lobby the state government every year, twice a year. We go as a group. We lobby for grant money to help initiatives like this. And we're a contact for when people want to talk about apples and cider in the press, for anything, they call us and we get advertising and public mentions about who we are and what we do. It's a rule in life that if you want to be taken seriously, you have to take yourself seriously and present yourself seriously. And when you do that, things change. Here's another initiative that the New York Cider Association has launched on a national scale that Sarah talked briefly about. Some people like sweet cider, and that's fine. Some people like dry cider, and that's fine. When you look at a bottle, this scale is designed to give a quantifiable, objective measure of whether it's dry, very dry, kind of dry, sweet, kind of sweet. Knowledge is power. We know that from the Riesling industry, when they adopted a scale very similar to this, it gave great push to their sales because people could know what they were buying. And now we're trying to establish a definition for a recognized New York cider that is historical, based on New York origin apples, such as the Newtown Pippin, which was developed in New York State and is a great cider apple. We want to define that, just like Chianti or Burgundy or Chablis, have a definition that gives a mark of distinction above just being New York apples. Next level, made with these special apples from New York. Our goal, we think big. Our goal is to be like the Napa Valley, Sonoma Valley of cider. And this kind of initiative will help us get there. So in the last year, in the different regions of the United States Association of Cider Makers, the Northeast, where we are and are active, has experienced the most growth. We have almost 1/8 of all the cider producers in the country in our state. People are talking about cider on the social media more than all other alcohols and more than craft beer. People are talking about it more and they're drinking it more. But we need to be real. Beer, wine, spirits are the bulk. Cider, 0.5% in the retail outlets. Grown over 10 years from 0.06 to 0.5%. Tiny. Tiny. But amongst the fastest growing. Small to getting bigger. It hasn't been all growth along the way, and there have been changes. 10 years ago, you can see the industry starting to grow. And most of the growth at that time was alcopop cider, very sweet, very obvious, low price. And then you'll see 4 years ago, a dip. People got tired of that cider. It was not novel. The big brand of cider that Sarah mentioned that is a partner to Glenwood's projects and New York Cider Association events did research. They discovered many consumers did not understand what cider was and could not identify the difference between a cider, alcopop style, brand, and a flavored malt beverage with apple flavor. They decided that even though they were a beer company, they needed to pull out of flavored style ciders and invest in consumer education around what cider is, and make ciders that were premium ciders that had viability long-term to be made from apples. Even the biggest brand in the country knew that they could always be undercut on price by someone who just put artificial apple flavor into a beverage built on malt sugar. No matter how big they seemed, you can't compete with cheap, fake garbage.
So I have a question, because you said also as a summarization that going premium is important, and this is how you distinguish yourself from the big players. But actually we have a special situation in Poland, because our market is not very developed. I mean, we don't have many big players. All the big players, they start to think about advertising themselves as premium producers and trying to build their category of cider and the way that they look at the cider as the main typical Polish cider. So what would you suggest for small producers and how does your contact with big producers look like? Not to be out of the world of the cider, but still not to be eaten by the big producers.
I think that there's a couple issues. One, the fact that big people are selling cider is a good thing. It's hard to be premium to nothing. If people don't know cider at all, then you can't be a better option. So it's very tempting to have antagonistic feelings to big producers and to but I counsel to accept that the big players are there and to value what they do and to define yourself against what they're doing. Without them, you couldn't distinguish yourself in some ways. It's very easy to draw those distinctions when you're small, made from fresh apples, not from concentrate. And if you tell the story cleanly, focusing on what you are and what differentiates you, and follow what Sarah laid out, that pathway of talking to the sommeliers and getting people to tell your story, it will snowball. And the fact that it's not a developed market is a good opportunity. It's tabula rasa, clean slate. So if everything in Spain, in Asturias, they have hundreds of years of cider history. Everyone knows that cider costs €2.50. And so even though they have great cider and they make fancier cider, they have a lot of trouble getting people to go to the premium. So if all the macro ciders are cheap and they're made with artificial flavors, frozen concentrate, this is very easy to define. Say, well, of course you can buy that, but why would you want to drink that? This is better.
My second question was connected with pricing that you already mentioned. So what was the response of the market that you try to introduce your ciders, which are actually same to the price of the wine or similar to the price of the wine? And you said you work with sommeliers, you work with retailers and so on. So what was the first response?
6 cans for $9.99 or $12 retail. When we first launched our cider, our first cider was $25 for $7.50, but we only had so much. We had a small production, and we knew we wanted to come premium, and then as our production went up, we could lower the price. It's very hard to raise the price. And so we came higher than we thought was reasonable, and to our surprise, people bought. And we've been able to lower our prices, but still we're premium to the market. So our cans, 4 cans, sell for $20 retail. So $5 for a can for half, 12 ounces. And at that price, which is twice, well, it's more than twice the price of a typical big producer, we're selling a lot of cans. So even though we're premium, but because we were very premium, and then and we've been slowly dropping the price, we found the price where now we're getting volume, but also our facility is now capable of delivering volume. So it's been it's easy to say, well, no one's gonna, my partner, when we went to the orchard, 100-year-old family orchard, why don't you make cider? And his answer was, the bottles are too expensive, there's no way we'll ever be able to sell any. Because they were looking at what existed, not what could exist. So you have to plan for the change, and then make the change happen the way you want it. because no one else is thinking about cider, but you guys are. And so if you think about cider and make a plan for cider, you can create the reality of what the market should be. The historians can't. The historian, they've been there for hundreds of years. The market is there. So to change an established market is very hard.
Hi, Karl.
Hi.
As you are not only a cider maker, you are also a marketing specialist and experienced distributor. I would like to ask you about the possibility of advertising. Because in Poland we have a situation that cider cannot be advertised publicly in the television on the same basis as beer, for example, can be. Advertisement in the internet is strictly limited as well. And some people say that this situation leads to be beneficial for the craft cider makers, because if you let the cider be advertised publicly, only the big players producing sweet and cheap cider will benefit from that, because they can afford big campaigns and so on. But on the other hand, maybe the possibility of advertisement could be beneficial for whole category, and also craft cider makers can benefit from that. What's your opinion about that?
I think both are probably true. I think that if the category is advertised, it will help the small producers. I think that there's maybe an advantage also for the small producers to go to the government and get special privileges because they're small. The concern that the government has to keep people from drinking too much can be a tool for you to promote the small growers, small producers. People don't drink expensive cider just to get drunk. They drink it because it's special. And so you can draw a distinction between what you're doing, which is helping the apple growers produce a value-add product that maintains a national industry while not contributing to a problem that they're worried about. We did that in New York, and we got special privileges for our licenses that enabled us to succeed. And I would seriously consider looking at all the ways you can communicate to the government why you should get special privileges because of those reasons. And so, as those changes happen, inevitably the big guys will come in and try to build on your privileges. And that'll be okay when it happens, but you don't have to fight for them. Fight for yourself. They're going to benefit. And as they see that your activities benefit them, they will come to the table and be part of what you're doing if you're well organized, and they'll bring a benefit as well.
I would like to know, how is the organic cider market in US going? And is this like a distinguished brand or something, or is it just influence that you mentioned?
I think absolutely there are some organic growers in the Northeast. We are not organic or sustainable. We have a problem with mildew in the region because it's humid, so there's some controversy about whether organic practices are better or more harmful or sustainable in the long term. But there are some growers. We have one producer who's a good friend of ours, and that's not far from Glenwood, who is not fully organic, but organic in a large aspect. And I suspect that people will value that on the bottle. I don't think it's very big yet because of the challenges of growing the apples organically, but I suspect it will be growing because of the health concerns that I highlighted. Americans are very concerned about health concerns, and so organic certification, I think, will play a big role, a growing role.